For coming. I am Lieutenant Bonnie. I am PIO for the Stoughton Police Department. With us today is Chief McNamara, Detective Sergeant Welch, and Detective Kuhn. And so Chief McNamara will address what we're here for. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're about to discuss information that led to the capture of a fugitive from justice for the crimes that took place here in Stoughton. And we are seeking the assistance of a second suspect to capture that suspect. As in all criminal cases, the suspect in this case is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So on February 2nd, 2019, the Stoughton Police Department responded to Halidon Place here in Stoughton for a man posing as a water department employee to gain entry into a home. Officers and detectives responded on that day to the scene, conducted and began an extensive investigation, canvassing the area, interviewing neighbors, interviewing clerks, store clerks, combing through many video surveillance from neighboring businesses. As a result of that video surveillance combing through, we were able to release a video on February 4th of a suspect who was seen in the video exiting the home, the victim's home, and from the bulkhead. That suspect is then seen hopping a fence, walking down an alleyway, crossing Washington Street, and entering a vehicle that was awaiting in the Wendy's parking lot. That vehicle was also seen by a witness in the driveway of the victim's home on Halidon Place. After that information, we put Detective Kuhn, who was assigned to the case, put out a law enforcement bulletin which gave the vehicle description, the suspect description, out and the method of entry into the home over a law enforcement bulletin. Almost immediately, other detectives were able to contact the Stoughton Police Department and Detective Kuhn. As information came in, we gathered information from Andover PD, and the detectives in Andover reported that they had a victim who reported an attempted ruse, which was similar to the one here in Stoughton. In that incident, the resident in Andover did not open the door, did not allow the person entry, and also was able to gain the license plate of the vehicle that the person had come out of in that incident. That plate was given to Detective Kuhn. It was determined that that vehicle was registered to an Enterprise vehicle. Further investigating, contacting Enterprise vehicle, Detective Kuhn, it was determined who the vehicle was rented to, which is a Paul Mitchell of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Detective Kuhn was able to get the video from the counter of Enterprise when Mr. Mitchell was renting the vehicle. As he was renting the vehicle, at the counter, he was pictured and can be seen in the video with a second man. That second man, that unidentified man, is also the same man that was seen in the video surveillance coming out of the bulkhead of the victim home in Stoughton. At that time, after gathering that information, Detective Kuhn put out a second law enforcement bulletin, which covered the East Coast, due to the fact that Mr. Mitchell was from Florida. Putting out the description and the video picture of the second unidentified man. Almost immediately, a short time after, Detective Kuhn received a call from a trooper in Pennsylvania. That trooper in Pennsylvania identified the second man as Stanley Mitchell, also of Florida. Both suspects were able to flee Massachusetts on February 2nd, just mere hours after the incident on Halidon Place here in Stoughton, before detectives were able to identify them at that time. With all that information in hand, Detective Kuhn reached out to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. They issued arrest warrants for both Stanley and Paul Mitchell, with full extradition from all 50 states for both parties. Detective Kuhn and Detective Sergeant Welch contacted both suspects by phone. They had numerous conversations over the last five weeks. The suspects in those conversations identified themselves as members of the Gypsy community. This information was further confirmed later by Detective Kuhn by speaking to law enforcement partners in New York, Pennsylvania, and also in Florida. The gypsy term was not a label given by law enforcement, but it is a term used by both suspects in their conversations with Detective Kuhn and Detective Sergeant Welch. This is an organized group who commit scams and crimes, moving quickly throughout states on the eastern seaboard. On March 5th, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department and officers assigned to the FBI task force executed an arrest warrant for Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell was then brought to extradition hearing, and where he waived his extradition. On March 13th, Detective Kuhn and Trooper Dunn flew to Florida to take custody of Paul Mitchell, where he was taken and flown back in custody back to Massachusetts. Mr. Mitchell was brought here to the Stoughton Police Department last night, and he was booked and charged with breaking and entering into a dwelling in the daytime, larceny over $1,200, and conspiracy to commit crime. Paul Mitchell was also notified last evening in booking at the Stoughton Police Department that he had a warrant for his arrest out of Wilmington, Mass, and the charges for that warrant are entering a dwelling under a false pretense and conspiracy. There are numerous other ongoing investigations in Massachusetts with regards to similar types of crimes. An arrest warrant is still out there and in full effect for Stanley Mitchell, and those charges on the warrant are assault and battery on a person over 60, breaking and entering in the daytime in a dwelling, larceny over $1,200, and conspiracy to commit a crime. Those are charges out of Stoughton Police Department. We'd like to thank the numerous law enforcement agencies that assisted the detectives in this case. Also, we'd like to thank the members of the Stoughton Police Department who never gave up on that day on February 2nd, continuing to investigate and interview and comb through numerous hours of surveillance. It helped a great deal to identify these suspects. Crimes against the elderly, obviously, very vulnerable group of our community, which is very despicable in my eyes, and the detectives continued and police officers continued to investigate this to bring these individuals to justice. We are very thankful, and we want to stress the importance of public cooperation. We gained that cooperation not only with the witnesses here in Stoughton, but a great witness in Andover who had the wherewithal to take the license plate down on that day and not let that person into their home and be victimized as well. I'd like to also truly look at the group of people that put all the efforts forward. This was an effort all along the eastern seaboard. Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, they all assisted in capturing the first individual and hopefully the second individual. Again, our work is not done. Stanley Mitchell's warrant for his arrest is still out there for his charges. Thank you for coming, and do you have any questions?